we would go out of the city to we called it racking. You know, you'd go out of the city and you would like team up with someone, you would have a bag or backpacks or what have you, and it was like a totally like easy thing to do. Like there was no cameras, like old dudes in paint stores, they weren't paying attention, like they didn't know what we were doing. And so you just like fill up literally like bags of paint, or you would like buy shit, return it, you know, get cash. It was just like super wide open. Like steal it. Sorry, you'd steal it and then return it without a receipt, and then you get cash. Like just things like that were happening all the time. But like super simple, not like huge sums of money or anything like that, but just sort of like getting by on the everyday was like a big part of my life. And then definitely going out of the city and just like, you know, filling each other's backpacks with paint was like a everyday thing. And markers, you know, we'd go to like office supply. I mean, because like the stores also back in the day, there was like no online shopping. So stores were like filled with all sorts of stuff, like huge array of things that people nowadays, they don't even realize like how like there was just so much different stuff in stores back then that you don't see nowadays. Like in terms of like office supplies or art supply stores or sort of stationery stores. It was like where we got all of our markers and mops, or what we were gonna make into mops. And it was all like run by elderly people that like weren't paying attention. So we would just like steal all their stuff. But, and just sort of like every day, terrible children. Yeah. But you know, stickers obviously was a big thing. And then markers. So Craig, who now has Crank, he definitely was like we all sort of like made our own ink, which is also super crazy and like toxic. But yeah, we would make our own mops and stuff. I mean, again, it had so much to do with just like different materials and different stuff. Like we would try all different things. Like I said, we were making mops and, trying to like do it the old world way with like eraser, like felt, and sort of like shoe polish bottles and unis and minis and just sort of like all different things.
Super messy.
Yeah, very messy and, explosions. But Craig really brought silver markers. Silver markers were amazing. And like paint markers. So it was just a little, but again, it was also like paintbrushes. You know, we'd go out painting, like drawing with paintbrushes also, and like just like holding a bottle of ink. I remember just like walking around with like a bottle of ink and a paintbrush, like I said, and it was just sort of like whatever you had available, and like the music we were listening to, and like I never went racking with Barry ever. I mean, I don't even really know how. I mean, Craig and Barry would go, I think, together. Craig and I did. It was really with like Josh. I think Josh and I were really, really good at stealing stuff together. I mean, we were terrible together. So but yeah, Craig and I, it was definitely like, you'd get way more shit if you went with another person, you know, because you could take literally like bags and you could like work together. So that was more so with like Craig and Josh that I was doing stuff like that. And then, I mean, if you're alone, you could only get so much, you know, but yeah, I mean, people would just like walk out of the store with stuff, you know, if you act like you're doing something, you can like get away with it. So it was just like, it was sort of like all hands on deck. But like I said, it kind of got to the point where it just was sort of annoying. Like it was just like at one point it was like you couldn't really like, you'd feel guilty buying something, which was sort of like insane. And it got like kind of very stressful and to some extent, because you're always sort of like sweating a little bit when you're stealing something. And it was just like causing so much like drama in your mind. And so I think I needed to sort of like step away from that quite a bit, you know what I mean? And sort of like revert back to sort of like normal life. But just because I think that just sort of like that mental state of just like always sort of like trying to scope out a scene or like feel it out and like see what's going on. And it was just became like too much energy, you know what I mean? It's like way more chill than just like buy a candy bar. But so I feel like that part, just I wanted it to end at some point. But I mean, in the beginning it was like fine. We were just like racking everything and it was like not a big deal, you know? And you know, no one's gonna like fucking buy their paint. You're like you know, you won't get any props if you do that. So I mean, there's nothing else you can do. Yeah, sort of had no choice. But it was fine. But it's definitely, it was like something I wanted to end at some point. But I mean, it was sort of like became a real lifestyle. I mean, you know, our whole lives were sort of like revolving around graph and sort of like getting away with it and sort of scoping scenes and sort of like thinking about the next spots and sort of like all of it was sort of like wrapped up in it. And I think that for me as a girl, it just sort of got like, it was like so dude driven. And I think, I mean, it was crazy because if we got rolled on as by the cops or whatever, they never, it was like, it's so like driven by stereotypes, as we know, like cops and what have you. But it's like they never thought I was doing graph. You know what I mean? It was always like, oh, did your boyfriends drive, you know, bring you out so they can like do their graph in front of you? And it was just like, you know, sure, you know, like okay, whatever you want, dude, whatever you want to think. That's, you know, whatever. But yeah, I mean, but then I think that for me as a girl and like being around like dudes and like dude graph, it just sort of like also sort of like wore me down. And I mean, graph, like really hardcore graph is not the most creative thing in the world. You know what I mean? It's not like, and I think for me, like juggling wanting to be an artist, I mean, yeah, that's the whole other thing that we could talk about. It's like, yeah, Barry McGee like made a whole like career out of graph and like the work that he was doing. And for me, it was really hard for me to sort of like bridge those worlds because for me, they were so separate. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't gonna like bring my graph into like a gallery space. I just didn't know how to bridge it because for one thing, graph, like I was sort of like saying earlier, it was like, graph was so much about like the people that I was hanging out with. It was like a social scene, you know, it was a social interaction and sort of like a language that we shared. It was sort of like something that we were doing like out at night or whatever. And then like during the day, I was like working in the studio, like painting. And so I never like on paintings, and it was sort of like something I couldn't really bridge. And so I think that's also another reason why I kind of just sort of ended it so abruptly, because I got into graduate school for art and I wanted to sort of like be just a normal studio artist. You know what I mean? Like I wanted to be in my studio painting. And so I think it was hard for me to sort of like bridge that world, and it was sort of like pulling quite a bit in one direction and sort of like taking me somewhere that I couldn't really like bring together. And so, you know, it was sort of like I never really wanted to like do graph in the, I mean, people nowadays, of course, like it's like, it's like so crazy. But I mean, again, it's like branding or commercializing of something that's sort of like, it's almost like unattainable or ephemeral, you know, graph to me. It's like, I don't really know how it can be sort of like in a gallery space or what have you. So that was really hard for me to sort of bridge. But yeah, people do it really well like Barry does, you know.